Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a...
Hi, I'm Ray.
And I'm Steph.
And this is the Psychom Hotline,
where we gossip about all the cringe and exciting ways science is communicated in real life.
So let's bring the drama.
Okay.
Hi, Steph.
Hey, Ray.
How are you, Steph? We're so natural.
And congratulations on setting up a second episode to talk about.
We did it. This is episode number 2, and we are alive and not canceled yet.
No.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Do we have any disclaimers, or what are you going to talk about? What we hated today? What's on our agenda?
Let's get into the conversation, and then we can post all of our disclaimers forever. Like, y'all, we had written so many disclaimers. Some of it was just the imposters, some of it was like worries, some of it was just us being the neurotic selves that we are.
Yeah. But we have some juicy topics that we want to talk about. But before we talk about our juicy topics, Ray, what are you hating on at the moment?
So this week, this is our unprofessional, no psychom related hatings. Mm-hmm. I hated on someone who told me I have weak sword arm. He literally held my forearm, was like, ooh, weak sword arm, which is true.
Yeah, but they touched you? They pitched your skin?
It's okay. No, it was a part of because they were showing me the hand movements that I should have done.
Okay.
And I think this is, so I do Iaido and Kendo classes, and they're different styles of samurai swordsmanship and the normal swordsmanship. And I do have weak sword arms. My cuts are not good. And I think the reason I hated on it so much was because it was true. And I see myself when I do swords, this badass, kick-ass, look at me doing all of that. It was it wasn't intended in a mean way. It was I can see why this hurts because you have weak sword arms. And it was look.
But they said it so matter-of-factly that you're
I was
gagged.
Excuse me. So,
I've been working really hard. There's got to be at least some strength.
I know. So my visceral first reaction was so much I hated hearing that, and the more time passed, and the more I realized I kind of asked for feedback and stuff and I always ask it, and at the end of each session you kind of ask to figure out what is good, what is bad, and everything. But it was just my reaction because I felt it attacked my identity as a kick-ass swordswoman. So that was mine. Yeah. What did you hate on this week, Steph?
A valid hating. What did I hate on? I hate that I don't have community right now. How sad is that? Should I start crying a little bit? My partner is gone for the week, and we live in a very small town, and small town that the fanciest place we have is a Longhorn, just chain restaurants is the level of small town that I'm in, and they're gone for the week, and I'm just bored. I'm so bored and so alone, and I have no friends. And so why don't I have friends? And I'm 30 and this sucks. So that's what I'm hating on. I'm hating on how lonely I feel right now. But that's neither here or there.
Do you miss that feeling of when you had friends and family and everyone close by? You didn't have to
for sure
a week ahead and just take the phone.
Exactly.
Now.
Yeah, I just want to be hey, what are you doing? And they're oh no, I'm bored. I'm okay, I'm going to come over. And I just want to come over and watch TV with you. That's all I want to do.
I know.
That's all I want to do.
That's
so sad.
That is to hate on. I know. I have felt different levels of that with all the meetings and everything. But I'm sorry, Steph.
It's okay. But anyways, what are we hating on professionally?
Okay, professionally. Do you want to start with your hate on professionally this week?
Or maybe you should start because yours isn't about our first episode. And then mine's going to lead into this episode.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we talked about this. I sent you a very long audio message in a different podcast. I really hated on ourselves. I hated on episode number 1. You sent it to me. It was Ray, here's the edits. Here it is. And I listened and I thought, this is so
your skin just crawling from the cringe of just listening to yourself.
The number of times I said there was so many
Same.
times like, Ray, shut up, stop saying.
Yeah.
If you say like one more, no, and then I was
But we don't even realize it. But now that we're saying it, now people are going to be listening to it and be like, we should just have like a like meter on the very corner
yeah,
of our thing.
that's the other thing. You're like, "Mm, should I say to my audience my incompetence? Are they gonna get tuned? Like, and then I try to, when even in that audio message, I try to slow down so much to avoid saying that. Then I was worried, am I gonna be boring? Because podcasts a lot of times are like fast paced, all of that. Then it just, and how disorganized it was, and we had so many thoughts going, but we also don't want to put too much time in it because this is still supposed to be fun and not a job. And I
Yeah.
refuse to put too much time on preparing for this.
Yeah. It's like, what's that fine balance of organized chaos where like we still sound competent, but it's like low effort, low
Mm-hmm.
effort type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I speaking of that made me think of this TikTok that I saw that cracked me up where this girl was practicing. I think she was in like a public a public speaking class. Like she's trying to, I'm even saying like 100 times right now, but she's trying to get better at not saying like. So she's recording a video, and every time she says like, she'll stop the video. And then she was like, maybe like 10 seconds in until she started saying it, and the video just cuts abruptly, and it cracks me up every single time. And so every video gets like a little bit progressively longer, and they're doing better. But oh man, it just, if this was this podcast,
Yeah.
would have been like first 2 seconds would
Yeah.
have been just abruptly cut.
Yeah. So are we incompetent, Steph? What's with that? Are we incompetent? Are we causing a perception of incompetence?
I don't know. I think it's up to the consumer.
Right.
I know there are some people that believe that saying like is like their pet peeve. It's like their ick,
Mhm.
That's like their ick of just like, oh, I hate when somebody always says like. But then I'm listening to celebrities and their podcast, and there's a lot of them that say like all the damn time too, and you don't even really think about it because it's just the way, even like all the TikToks that I'd be watching, all the videos
Mhm.
that I'd be watching, that are not science forward, they're just like everyday type of life. The way that we naturally talk is just very like casually and just
Yeah.
because we're just in that sass, gossipy
Mhm.
kind of thing, or at least in the spaces that I find
Right.
myself
Or
in.
the up talk. And then if I would talk about that, there's a lot of these
Yeah.
kind of like intonations and words and stuff that I think could probably change the perception of competence. There is like all the study we do know that, and competence is super important obviously for science communication because it's the combination of competence and warmth and that credibility and all of that that gets people to trust you. um,
Mhm.
it's complicated, but it's one of the things that contributes to trust. So you do want to manage that perception of people having of you. But anything like even if like you use too much jargon, if you seem not understandable and all of that, it all contributes to people seeing you as someone they could trust or not. So the question would be, can people understand what we're saying, and do we seem coherent?
Yeah, and I think I believe context matters because the example that I just rambled on about was like, okay, I see a bunch of TikTokers doing it, but they're just casual people. They're not posing themselves as
Right.
experts. They're just casual everyday storytellers of saying their day to day versus us. We're trying to, maybe not pose is the right word. We're not posers, but we're trying to be perceived that we're competent in the science of science communication. But because we're speaking so casually about it, and in this umbrella term that we're doing of like gossip and drama, does that lower our competency?
Oh,
Because we're like doing this in a format that's not perceived as something professional when we're just like kikiing and gossiping and
yeah.
being chismosa.
Yeah. Plus, I would assume a lot of our audience already knows us.
Yeah,
So we
exactly.
probably.
Our eight listeners are just our friends that support us.
Listeners.
But that's a full room in a small space. That is a full intimate setting. So that's what
I want your
matters.
optimism in my life.
Okay. Well, that's going to segue into what I'm hating on
Mhm.
and what the topic of this episode discussion is, like competence versus what?
Oh,
Trustworthiness, credibility versus perception.
should we say competence versus incompetence, or?
Yeah. Competence versus incompetence. Okay, so I teased this in our not last episode, make it seem like we are like already 300 episodes in. I teased this in our first episode of this person that I stumbled upon on my For You page on TikTok, and they are a scientist. And the first thing out of their mouth is, I am a cancer researcher, and you should trust me when I tell you that you need to take these supplements and it's going to do X, Y, and Z. I know everything about chemicals because I work in a research lab. So this is why you need to be doing it. And man, I see, and because I'm hating on this, I keep seeing their stuff pop up on my feed. And it drives me insane that I literally have sent it to not only you, but to some other like SciComm friends of just like, what do you guys think about this? Because like, I hate this. I hate it so much and it enrages me because like, I don't know, man, it just gives me the ick, and it gives me the ick, and so I should we play it? Maybe a soundbite of it?
Well, yeah, we could discuss that in the editing if we want to play it or
Okay,
not. Maybe that would be also
yeah.
an audience.
But let me show you this most recent one. Let me
Okay.
show you this most recent one,
Okay.
right? All right.
Oh,
All right.
oh
Okay, so it starts
yes.
so like,
Oh.
I man, it's okay, so real quick. Second half.
Wait, wait, wait. In case we
Okay.
decide not to play this, can I give a
Yes.
summary? So this
Yes.
woman comes in and first says that before you give me any, like, I'm a chemist, so I know chemicals. Before you give me any sass or anything, I'm also a scientist. So I know what I'm talking about. I also look this young because I take NAD, which, oh boy. And then she goes on to talk about NADs and introduces the supplement. Continue.
Okay. So like, oh, man, so Ray and I were having a before we started this podcast, we were having a discussion about like what we're going to talk about, and I've been wanting to talk about this person for such a long time because they're trying to establish their credibility by saying they're a research scientist and a cancer research scientist, and they know chemicals, and so that's why we should just automatically believe them and trust them. And okay, like okay, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, and uh, and you know they have their little not little, but they have their little biology spiel in the middle, explaining like what exactly that does. And someone who is not doesn't have a background in biology, my background's in chemistry. Sometimes I don't know all the abbreviations for biology, so I'm going to automatically assume okay, this person is filming in a research lab. So I'm going to assume that their credibility is legit. They said that they're a research scientist. They have their lab coat on. I'm going to I'm going to understand and I guess perceive that they're competent because they are a scientist in this setting and they're talking about biology stuff that I don't really know about and I'm just going to assume that she's correct. But what drives me crazy is that it's for the sake of like selling a supplement and using that credibility to be like you should take this because this like this is what like I don't know something about it is just like it gives me the ick.
Right.
It gives me the ick.
Oh, there is just listen, I'm a social scientist, so I don't even know the science of a lot of that. But even as a person that consumes enough content, like you keep hearing it's not one supplement, it's genetics, it's environment, it's this, it's that. So don't go ahead and say if I look like this, it's because of the NAD. It's like when every time a new celebrity comes out and it's like, oh, I do face yoga. You're like,
Yeah,
honey,
yeah.
no, you
You're
don't.
like, no, you totally have like a whole team of like fitness people, Botox and da da
Right,
da. You
all
know,
the
like they
same.
have like a whole
Right.
thing that's
And
like
there's
helping
nothing
them.
wrong with it. It's just that don't
Mhm,
sell it to me as something that it
mhm.
is not. And the problem with her specifically is the first time you sent me one of her stuff, which wasn't even like as much as this one, I ended up realizing that, oh, this is all the content, right? There was
Mhm.
no nuance, no background, nothing about this is good, but it's not as good. This is this, but can do this other thing. You don't have to spend money on all of that. I mean, I follow a lot of like skincare people that go ahead and are like, you can use this, but hey, sunscreen, moisturize, water, not even water, sunscreen and moisturize, and that's it. Um, I think we build competence around science and everything as a community. I don't think it's just one person. And one of the things that like makes me mad the most is that this one person probably has an impact on how many other people that might seem like her but are not like her and do things differently would also be perceived as probably ingenuous. Because, did I say the word correct? Ingenuous? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Because she's saying something that if like a few people are like, I don't know if I trust her.
Wait, is ingenuous or disingenuous?
Disingenuous.
Disingenuous.
Wow, really helping with that confidence perception.
Dude, I don't have English is not our first
No, no,
language.
no, no. We're doing more than enough with English. So, round of
Yeah, yeah,
applause, please.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think okay, so then I was trying to figure out like, okay, where is my hating coming from? Because yeah, because it's like, okay, yeah, put our SciComm hater hat. Um, because we've seen other things, other products that, okay, this is the number one recommended from doctors to use this toothpaste, or like the I don't know. I don't know why. I think it's more clear when you know a company is putting money into
Hmm.
marketing and know that this is a marketing material. But on TikTok, which is so much more personable and more like one to one, an individual in that sense, to like see an individual scientist act on this and like sell these supplements, like
Right.
something about it's like, okay, I'm not hating on them wanting to make money.
Hmm.
I think I'm just like I think what irks me is they're using like valid science communication principles to sell you this thing
Right.
without like what you're saying earlier of like providing more nuance or more yeah like just more decision making and letting the consumer make a decision rather
Right.
than just like you need this then buy this
Right.
versus because like with other science communicators like for example dr I think it's his name is Ben Rain. um he is like a neuroscientist and he's been really active and popular on TikTok, and he recently started a series where he's like, okay, I'm constantly being bombarded with seeing content about like people selling these supplements, but like, what is the actual science behind it? So, like, with an unbiased perspective, he's looking into the literature. He's like, this is what I came across. This is what the benefits are. This is where the limitations are. This is where we are so far, and that's the information. Which I, as a consumer, like
Hmm.
appreciate that because the intention that I'm believing that this person is telling me is that like, hey, I don't know either. I'm looking into it. This is what I found. This is what we can think of it. Here's for you to decide
Hmm.
versus like this person who is like specifically link in bio with, like they're selling you something that I
Every
think that just
single,
like drives me wild.
every single post, right?
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
it's also when you gave me this, we were both like reading the study that it's basically saying something along the line of, is credibility even like an important thing anymore, right? It's the study by Anderson, Nathan Walter, shout out Nathan Walter, he's a professor at Northwestern, I took his classes and he's wonderful. But they basically talk about this idea that we think that if you seem as a competent scientist, you talk about a message, even if it's controversial, sometimes we're like, well, this person is competent, right? So I'm going to believe them. But when they looked at competence and credibility, which credibility is like not only expertise, but do I trust you? And you're like, oh, here's a scientist, they're very competent and credible and all of that. And then they give a message that the message is like counter to what you believe. In their case, it was, I think, GMO related and climate change
Yeah.
related.
GMO and vax. Yes.
They're
Yes. Yes.
climate change related. And once people were like, oh, this is counter to what I believe in, the perceptions of competence and credibility dropped. They were like, oh, maybe they're not an expert. So, what determines that expertise and credibility is, do they align with what you think? However, one of the things they suggested is that it does matter what the order is. So, do you first establish that, like that I'm an expert, and then have that message coming in, or is it like, is the order different? In that case, in her case, in the TikTok case, she establishes that credibility, expertise, and all of that, and then goes into her messages, which I'm like, we can learn something from that. How do we as scientists, instead of like jumping into messages, first take that time to build that relationship? And I think a lot of YouTubers and people that have these like parasocial relationships with their audiences, these long-term relationships, when you keep seeing them, you keep talking to them, you feel like you kind of know them, you already know that they're an expert, and then when something becomes controversial, you already that have that established relationship and perception. So it kind of helps with what the next message is. That's also why we're like, before crisis hits, that's like before that is when you have to build a relationship with your community as a scientist. And then when something happens that could be controversial, then they can have more impact. So there's something we can learn from her. That doesn't mean we approve of how she's doing this.
And something interesting too in that paper is they also looked at non-experts and like when if and how they're perceived, their competence is perceived, and more often than not they're given the benefit of the doubt because they're like, well, it's more of like their opinion, so you can like kind of like respect someone for their opinion, but when it comes from an expert telling us their thing, then I think like we hold them to like a higher standard
Right,
and
right.
have like what are their actual intentions
Yeah, yeah.
versus, are are they doing this on their own accord, are they
Mhm.
being paid, what's the motive?
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if it's because like the baseline is different for like
Yeah.
how much you perceive an expert to be an expert versus like a YouTuber. Because I think they were looking at YouTubers. Um,
Were they looking at YouTubers? Because I'm like with YouTube, like, because man, okay, so this is also maybe not okay. Sorry, we don't have to go this way.
no, I
What were you
actually
gonna
do want to
say?
talk about the YouTube stuff you brought up in the beginning. Like, what's the difference between
Okay,
TikTokers
okay,
and YouTubers who do ads, sponsorship, which is everyone, and they
yes.
should do it. Like, we approve of you making money with that. But what's the difference?
Yeah, okay, so where this came from was because, peel apart my haterness a little bit more of just like, okay, why am I annoyed at this person? But then if I have other science communication friends who have a paid sponsorship post that it's clearly labeled as an ad. That's clear in the caption that it's a partnership. Um, and like I want to support them to be able to use their like scientific expertise to either endorse a product.
Hmm.
But why is that different? Like why is that different in my mind compared to like this
Yeah.
person who is doing it for to make money for themselves and sell something, using TikTok as a platform to
Mhm.
generate money.
Right.
So like why am I perceiving that differently? And then Ray mentioned of like, well, do we have sponsorships and YouTube ads? But I think the difference there though is that usually some of the ads that we have on YouTube are usually super separated from like the content itself. So say, Veritasium releases a video on
Mm.
PFAS this week. But then his sponsor was like NordVPN.
Right. Right.
Like NordVPN is just like a VPN that has nothing to like, it's just a product that has nothing to do with like PFAS. It would have been different if it was like, this ad is sponsored by Teflon, or like this ad is sponsored by,
Right. Right. Right.
yeah, exactly, or like a competitor
Right.
to like anti Teflon or anti blah,
Right.
blah,
Which
blah,
was
PFAS type of.
not as like, what if this was something that was like, it's a company that tries to get rid of the oh, okay, so he had like a sponsorship.
There was a filtration.
Right, right, right. Like the one that was, so that like that to me is fine. Or like the one that was about, hey, there's this organization that basically goes and tells you who is reporting on what, like what
Mhm.
information, and is it like what is the political partisanship.
Oh, ground news,
And I
ground
was like,
news.
you know
Yes.
what? Like that is a helpful. That to me is like a science message. To your point, rather than if this was like a Teflon competitor.
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. But that's different than, say, this paid sponsorship ads or brand deals that we can see independent science communicators on social media use. But for the most part, the stuff that they're endorsing is like, check out this watch that uses this, like, check out this technology, check out this, like, I don't know why. When it comes related to like health, I think at least for me, that's like a touchier subject or a more
Right,
a more nuanced thing that it's like, okay, like where's the line? Like what
right,
like
right.
is what it like what are we should we be endorsing these things or not? Or like
Mhm.
what like I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think it's a little bit different of just like, okay, like
Right.
where is the source of the money coming from? And then what do
Mhm.
I feel personally in regards to that versus just like if I try to look at it at a neutral perspective.
Right. The example that also comes to mind where you're like, well, I'm glad this person didn't endorse in the past was during COVID time, Science Sam.
Hmm.
She talks a lot about like COVID misinformation, vaccination, and all of that. And I remember there was this Q&A she did one time, and I think it was something to the effect of someone asking her like, "Are you being paid by big pharma?" And she was like, "You can like go back and look. Like I have not been paid by big pharma, or like I haven't been sponsored anything related to that." So it's for like people like her or anyone that is like specifically talking about stuff medicine related. It's so important to be like, I don't like, you can go look, like I have not gotten money from them, I haven't done ads for them. So it's good to have that clean track record depending on what kind of communication you're doing. And I think that's why it's important, as you said, like, are you like talking about something where it might be even good, but it might cause an association that would make people lose trust or question what you're doing. So choosing those sponsorships not only is like very important for your credibility and competence, but also is super frustrating because science communication doesn't pay well, especially if you're in like media. So like for us, despite like being like critical or being like, oh, it does matter what you do, we come in with a lot of, hopefully you could see it, empathy, because we also understand you got to make a living, and it might seem like something is shady if you're doing it, but if you know, like in your heads, but you're like, I know what I'm doing, I know this is not shady, I know this is right. If you know it, you will always have audiences that are not going to trust you, and you always have audiences that some of them are going to trust you. I think what we are trying to talk about is like examples where it's like disinformation and misinformation sometimes. It's more like this is more intentional. There's no content that is nuanced. There's no content that is trying to bring balance, or it's more about science communication rather than this person to us is purely a company that is trying to sell different products. That's what we see it. And the product is not science or information or knowledge. It's a product.
Yeah, yeah. Rather than just like, hey, I research supplements all the time as part of my cancer research to see what's going to be a good benefit or a good treatment. Like, this is what I learned from it. I feel like that's a different perspective than like, hey, blindly trust me because I'm saying that I'm an expert and I know all these
Mhm.
things. And so, like, buy this stuff so I can
Right,
make money. I'm like, ugh.
right.
Well, thanks for letting me get that off my chest. I've been wanting to talk about that. Every time Ray's like, let me think of this new idea. I'm like, let's talk about this woman.
I appreciate it. I
But yeah,
appreciate
like, disclaimer. Again, like, no hate to this person. We have no idea who this person is. They're trying to
right,
make money.
right.
TikTok is a platform where people are making money. It's the
Yeah.
next QVC. But man, I'm going to be a hater.
Right, right. It's our reaction to the content that we're analyzing. We don't know this person's story. We
Yeah,
don't know.
it's not
Yeah,
personal.
yeah, yeah. The same way we might not like hate this product because they're making fun money and they're gonna make ads off of it. It's
Hmm.
about what it seems to be that it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. All right, Ray. That was my hot take. I got off my chest. What is your rapid hot take? Because we're already at 30 minutes.
This is like so many different hot takes. I feel like unprofessional, and another version, and the last hot take. The last hot take is when we look at sometimes workshops and research and we say, oh, scientists are already seen mostly as competent, so we should work on their perception of warmth and kindness and vulnerability and all of that. Yes, but yes, and um, that is usually true depending on who either I think that scientist is. Is it like a white man, or who are the people that are answering these surveys, right? Is it people from a different country? Is it like that see someone, a scientist that might have an accent? Because we know there are studies that women are seen as less competent. Black women who are doctors, like in studies that were compared to other ones, are seen as less warm, less competent, especially if they start interacting with a white patient. That's gonna make it even worse, which is crazy. But there's all these different versions of like, if you have an accent, if you are black and brown, all of that is gonna change your perception of competence. So if we're doing workshops on science communication, we should probably not only work on how to make people learn how to show their warmth, but also like as women of color, how do we show our warmth, our competence, right? This is for another episode, but then it goes into like women then try to be like, okay, here's how I'm going to talk to my competence. They do that, it boosts their competence, but then people see them as less warm because they're like bragging. So it's
We
frustrating.
just can't win. We just
You just
can't
can't
win.
win. Yeah. Steph,
Wait,
what's new from? Oh, what were you gonna say?
no, I didn't even know what I was going to say, but go ahead. Do it again. Do it again.
I was Seth. What is new with our audience? What have we heard? What hot takes they want to talk about?
Well, we have been getting some submissions, which is super exciting. Please email us at drama@psychomhotline.com or visit our website, psychomhotline.com. And there's like an easy little form for you to fill out. But we've been getting some stories about science, like independent science communicators getting plagiarized their content being straight up copied. Um, we can continue our discussion about competency and plagiarism, but then this other submission mentioned that like this person was reviewing their grant and stole verbiage of their work in order to submit it to their own grant, and then want to hire the person that wrote the grant to be like working on the grant. I don't know if that made any sense, but essentially like she was helping another scientist with a grant, wrote stuff for it. This other reviewer saw that, took the language, and then was using that to try to hire her to help. And she was like, this is so shady. So I'm excited to get into that next week, but please submit us your stories. I can't be the only one hating from outside the club. I want you guys to also hate, and we can put on our psychom hater critical thinking hats on. So thanks for joining us for a second episode. This was fun.
It
Any
was
last
fun.
words, Ray?
Yes. I'll talk to you probably in a few seconds.
Yes. All right. Bye, friends.
Bye, friends.
Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a what you say.